Most people think beautiful gardens are built with money. They think the secret is expensive landscaping, professional designers, irrigation systems, imported stone paths, and years of gardening experience. But if you pay attention to the gardens people actually stop and stare at in summer, the ones overflowing with color, the ones buzzing with bees, the ones that somehow look better every single year instead of worse, you notice something. A lot of those gardeners made one incredibly simple decision. They stopped planting things that died. They stopped rebuilding their garden from scratch every spring, and instead they planted perennials. Plants that return every year, plants that get larger every year, plants that slowly turn a plain yard into something that looks established, layered, alive, and almost effortless. And right now, May is one of the best times all year to get them into the ground. The soil is warming. Roots establish fast. Rainfall is usually reliable. And these plants have an entire growing season to settle in before winter. Plant them now, and by midsummer your garden starts transforming. By next year it looks fuller. By year 3 it looks intentional. By year 5 people start slowing their cars down when they drive past your house. Today, I'm giving you 20 of the most beautiful perennials you can plant right now. Not fragile greenhouse divas. Not plants that need constant spraying, staking, feeding, or babying. These are the plants that experienced gardeners quietly rely on year after year because they perform. Some bloom for months. Some survive drought. Some feed pollinators nonstop. Some spread and multiply for free. And one of the plants later on this list can bloom for over 100 years in the exact same spot. Another looks delicate enough to fall apart in the rain, but survives brutal winters, recedes itself endlessly, and quietly takes over gardens for generations. If you want a garden that becomes more beautiful with less work over time, you're going to love this list. And if you enjoy practical gardening, self-sufficiency, and building landscapes that actually work with nature instead of fighting it, subscribe now, because every week we bring you the kind of growing knowledge modern gardening forgot. Let's start with the perennial that might be the easiest beautiful plant on earth to grow. Number 1, Black-eyed Susan. The plant that refuses to fail. There's a reason. Black-eyed Susans grow in roadside ditches. There's a reason they appear in abandoned fields. There's a reason they survive in neglected gardens where everything else disappears. Because Rudbeckia is almost impossible to kill. And somehow, despite that toughness, it's still genuinely beautiful. Those golden yellow petals surrounding dark chocolate centers create one of the most recognizable flower forms in North America. But what makes Black-eyed Susan special is not just the flowers, it's endurance. Plant this once in full sun, and it will reward you with wave after wave of blooms, from midsummer all the way into fall. Heat doesn't care. Drought, fine. Poor soil, still blooms. In fact, too much fertilizer often makes it weaker. This is one of those rare plants that performs better when you leave it alone. And wildlife absolutely loves it. Pollinators swarm the flowers through summer. Then, in fall, the seed heads feed finches and songbirds long after the blooms are gone. So even in winter, the plant is still doing a job. That's the recurring theme of great perennials. They aren't decorations. They become part of the ecosystem. Number 2, Coneflower, the pollinator powerhouse. If Black-eyed Susan is dependable, Coneflower is charismatic. Those raised central cones, surrounded by swept-back petals, create one of the most recognizable silhouettes. And once Echinacea starts blooming, your yard changes. Butterflies arrive. Bees arrive. Goldfinches arrive. The garden suddenly feels alive. Native to North American prairies, coneflower evolved in heat, wind, drought, and difficult conditions. which means once established, it asks for almost nothing. Plant it in full sun. Give it decent drainage. And then mostly stay out of its way. Now here's what experienced gardeners know. Do not cut the seed heads down in fall. Leave them standing, because those dark, spiky cones become winter feeding stations for birds. You'll watch goldfinches balancing on snow-covered stems in January. And suddenly, gardening stops feeling seasonal. It starts feeling permanent. Coneflowers also self-seed gently over time, meaning one planting slowly turns into many. Your garden literally expands itself. Number 3. Shasta daisy, the flower that never goes out of style. Some plants become classics because they're trendy. Others become classics because generation after generation of gardeners prove they work. Shasta daisy belongs in the second category. Bright white petals, golden centers, clean structure, constant cheerfulness, everything around it looks better. And the beauty of Shasta daisy is that it fits almost anywhere. Cottage gardens, farmhouse borders, wildflower meadows, formal beds, cutting gardens, it belongs in all of them. Plant them in full sun in May, and by early summer you'll have armloads of blooms. And unlike many flowers that collapse after rain, Shasta daisies keep standing. Deadhead spent flowers, and they'll often rebloom. Divide the clumps every few years, and one plant becomes 5. This is another perennial that quietly turns time into abundance. Number 4. Blanket flower. The plant that never stops blooming. Every gardener eventually discovers something frustrating. Many plants bloom beautifully. For about 2 weeks, then the show is over. Blanket flower is different. Gaillardia blooms like it has something to prove. Those fiery red, orange, and yellow flowers start appearing in late spring and often continue all the way to frost. Not occasionally, continuously. And the hotter the summer gets, the happier this plant becomes. Poor soil, perfect, dry conditions, excellent, scorching heat, bring it on. Blanket flower evolved on harsh prairie land where survival favored toughness. And that toughness becomes your advantage. When other plants slow down in late summer heat, Gaillardia keeps producing. It becomes the glue holding the garden together. And visually, it creates energy. The colors almost vibrate in sunlight. Plant it near cooler blues and purples like salvia or catmint, and the contrast becomes incredible. Number 5. Lavender. The plant that turns a garden into an experience. Lavender changes the atmosphere of a garden. Not just visually, emotionally. You smell it before you reach it. The silver foliage glows in evening light. Bees hum through the flower spikes all summer, and every breeze carries fragrance across the yard. People think lavender is difficult, usually because they kill it with kindness. Here's the truth. Lavender does not want rich soil. It does not want heavy watering. It does not want mulch piled around its crown. It wants sharp drainage, full sun, dry roots, and space. That's it. Treat it like a Mediterranean hillside plant instead of a thirsty garden flower, and it becomes astonishingly easy. And lavender gives back constantly. Fresh fragrance, dried bundles, pollinator support, winter structure, calming oils, natural insect resistance. This is not just a flower. It's one of humanity's oldest cultivated plants for a reason. And we're only getting started. Because now we move into the perennials that completely transform difficult spaces. Shade, wet ground, dry slopes. The places most gardeners think are problems. The next few plants turn those problems into the most beautiful parts of the yard. But before we keep going, if you're realizing that perennial gardening is less about constant work and more about smart long-term planting, hit the like button. Because that one shift in thinking changes everything. You stop rebuilding your garden every year and start building something that improves itself. Now, let's get into the shade legends. Number 6. Hosta, the queen of shade. There are gardeners who hate shade. Then there are gardeners who discover hostas, and suddenly shade becomes their favorite part of the yard. Because hostas create something flowers often cannot: lushness, big dramatic leaves, cool colors, texture, movement, presence. Some varieties look tropical, others look architectural. Some glow chartreuse in morning light, others carry deep blue-green tones that almost look painted. And once established, hostas can live for decades. Not years, decades. Plant them beneath trees, along shaded walkways, near porches, under windows, anywhere the afternoon sun softens. Then watch them slowly expand into massive, elegant clumps over time. And unlike trendy plants that disappear after a few seasons, hostas age beautifully. Older clumps become more impressive every year. This is one of the defining characteristics of elite perennial gardens. Time improves them. Number 7. Bleeding Heart, the spring plant that looks unreal. Bleeding Heart does not look like a real plant. Those perfectly shaped pink hearts dangling from curved stems look almost artificial, like someone designed them for a fantasy movie. And every spring, they appear again. Bleeding Heart blooms early in the season when the garden is still waking up. That timing matters, because it creates emotional momentum. After winter, suddenly you have graceful arching stems covered in flowers unlike anything else in the garden. And here's what makes experienced gardeners love it. Bleeding Heart understands timing. Once summer heat arrives, the foliage slowly fades away. Which sounds like a problem until you realize smart gardeners plant hostas nearby. As Bleeding Heart disappears, the hostas expand and fill the space. One plant exits, another takes over. That's layered perennial design. A garden that changes through the season instead of peaking once and collapsing. Number 8. Astilbe, the shade plant that brings fireworks. Most shade plants focus on foliage. Astilbe brings drama. Huge feathery plumes in pink, red, lavender, and white, rising above fern-like foliage. And unlike many flowers that hate wet ground, Astilbe thrives in moisture. Low areas, near ponds, beside downspouts, the damp corner of the yard where other plants rot, Astilbe loves those places. And visually, it changes them completely. Those soft, upright blooms catch morning light beautifully. They move in the breeze. And even after blooming, the dried seed heads remain attractive deep into fall. Plant early, mid, and late varieties together, and you can extend the display for months. One section of garden. Continuous progression. That's the secret behind landscapes that always seem interesting. Not one giant bloom moment. Layered timing. Number 9. Coral bells, the plant that makes every other plant look better. Most gardeners focus too much on flowers. Experienced gardeners eventually realize foliage matters more. Because flowers come and go, leaves stay. And coral bells produce some of the most beautiful foliage in the perennial world. Deep burgundy, copper, caramel, silver, purple, black, lime green. Some leaves look metallic, some look painted, some almost glow. And all season long, they hold that color. Then in summer, delicate flower stalks rise above the foliage, and hummingbirds start visiting. Coral bells are incredibly useful in design because they act like visual connectors. They bridge gaps, define borders, create contrast, anchor flower combinations. They're one of the reasons professionally designed gardens feel layered and intentional. Number 10. Delphinium, the impossible blue towers. There are flowers, And then there are towering spires covered in rich blue blooms that rise 5, sometimes 6 feet tall. The color alone feels impossible. True saturated blue is rare in gardens, and delphiniums deliver it at full scale. Plant them toward the back of borders where their height creates structure, and when they bloom, the entire garden changes. Suddenly everything has verticality. The border feels deeper, more dramatic, more layered. Now, yes, delphiniums ask for more care than some plants on this list. They appreciate rich soil, consistent moisture, and protection from strong wind. But when those spikes erupt in early summer, you understand immediately why gardeners keep growing them, and hummingbirds absolutely adore them. Number 11, lupin, the early season color explosion. Lupins bloom during one of the most important moments in the gardening calendar, that awkward period after spring bulbs fade, but before the main summer garden explodes. And they fill that gap magnificently. Dense flower spikes in purple, pink, yellow, white, blue, and bicolors rising above beautiful palmate foliage. They look almost architectural. And here's something most people never realize. Lupins improve your soil. Like peas and beans, they fix nitrogen from the air and store it underground. Meaning, while they grow, they're feeding the earth around them. That's another recurring theme among smart perennial choices. The best plants don't just survive. They actively improve the ecosystem they grow in. Number 12, foxglove. The plant that gardens itself. Foxglove feels theatrical. Tall spikes covered in tubular blooms, spotted with intricate markings inside each flower. They look almost medieval. And what makes foxglove fascinating is that it behaves like a wandering performer. It self-seeds, not aggressively, gracefully. One year it appears near a fence, the next year beside a path. Then suddenly, along the edge of a woodland bed, it moves through the garden naturally, which means, over time, your landscape starts feeling less planted and more alive. Bumblebees adore foxglove. You'll often hear them before you see them. Deep buzzing inside those tubular flowers as they climb upward through the spike. And despite its elegant appearance, foxglove is surprisingly resilient once established. Number 13, bellflower. The quiet overachiever. Some plants scream for attention. Bellflower earns admiration slowly. Those soft blue and violet bell-shaped blooms carry a kind of calm elegance that balances louder plants beautifully, and campanula spreads gently over time, creating drifts that look natural instead of forced. That's important. The best perennial gardens don't look manufactured, they feel settled. Like the plants chose the space themselves, bellflowers helped create that feeling. And the shades of blue they produce are unusually pure, cool, clear, almost luminous in evening light. Number 14, salvia. The pollinator machine. If there's one perennial almost every experienced gardener eventually plants, it's salvia, because few plants work harder. Long bloom season, heat tolerance, pollinator support, drought resistance, beautiful structure, excellent color. And if you deadhead the flower spikes after blooming, many varieties bloom again, and again, and again. Meanwhile, hummingbirds move through the flowers non-stop. Plant salvia beside warm-colored flowers like blanket flower or black-eyed Susan, and the cool blue-purple spikes intensify everything around them. This is one of the most reliable design tricks in perennial gardening. Warm and cool contrast. It makes gardens feel vibrant instead of flat. Number 15. Catmint, the plant that softens everything. Catmint may be one of the most useful filler plants ever discovered. Soft, silver foliage, clouds of lavender blue flowers, long bloom season, wonderful fragrance, and it spills over pathways, around roses, across stone edges, which gives gardens softness. That's something beginners often miss. Beautiful gardens are not rigid. They flow. Catmint creates that flowing effect effortlessly. And the best part? You can shear it back hard after blooming, and it comes roaring back with fresh flowers. Almost like resetting the plant. Few perennials provide this much visual value with this little effort. Number 16, Penstemon, the hummingbird highway. Penstemon turns a garden into an active wildlife corridor. Those tubular flowers practically announce themselves to hummingbirds. And once the blooms open, the aerial traffic begins. Hovering, darting, circling, returning. It's one of the fastest ways to make a garden feel alive. Native penstemons evolved in difficult conditions. Rocky soils, dry hillsides, temperature swings, which means many varieties thrive where fussier plants struggle. And unlike some flashy flowers that collapse after bloom, penstemon keeps a clean, attractive structure through the season. It looks intentional. Number 17, Yarrow. The plant built for survival. Yarrow is ancient. Humans have cultivated it for medicine and healing for thousands of years. And when you grow it, you immediately understand why it survived that long. Because Achillea is unbelievably tough. Heat, drought, poor soil, wind, neglect, yarrow handles all of it. Meanwhile, those broad, flat flower clusters create landing pads for beneficial insects. Hoverflies, parasitic wasps, lacewings, the insects that quietly protect gardens from pests. And visually, yarrow fills an important design role. Its flat flower heads contrast beautifully with spiky plants like salvia and rounded plants like coneflower. Great gardens depend on shape variation as much as color. Number 18, Peony, the 100-year flower. This is where perennial gardening becomes something bigger. Because peonies are not temporary plants, they are legacy plants. There are peonies blooming today beside old farmhouses that were planted before electricity reached the property. Families move, homes change, generations pass, and the peony keeps blooming. Those enormous, fragrant flowers almost don't look real. Massive, layered blooms in white, blush pink, coral, crimson. The kind of flowers people stop walking to look at. And yes, the bloom season is brief. But that's part of what makes it powerful. Peony season feels like an event, a reward, a yearly reminder that patience produces things annual gardening never can. And once established, peonies require almost nothing. Plant them correctly, give them sun, don't bury them too deeply, then leave them alone. And year after year they become more magnificent. Number 19, Iris. The elegant survivor. Irises carry themselves differently than other flowers. There's something refined about them. Those upright standards and cascading falls create one of the most recognizable flower forms in gardening. And the color combinations are extraordinary. Velvet purple, copper bronze, white with blue veining, golden yellow, near black. Some flowers look almost hand-painted, and once established, irises multiply aggressively underground through rhizomes, meaning one planting slowly becomes an entire colony. That's one of the hidden powers of perennial gardening. Compounding beauty. The landscape literally increases itself over time. Number 20, Columbine. The fragile-looking plant that outlives everything. The plant that looks delicate enough to break in a light breeze, yet survives freezing winters. Poor soil, partial shade, neglect. Those intricate, nodding flowers with backward-pointing spurs look almost unreal. Like tiny, exotic birds suspended above the foliage. And hummingbirds absolutely love them. But the real magic of Columbine begins after the first planting. Because Columbine reseeds itself freely. It drifts. One appears beside a stone wall, another beneath a tree, another along a pathway. And because different varieties cross-pollinate, every generation creates new color combinations. Your garden slowly begins designing itself. That's why columbine belongs at the end of this list, because it represents the deepest truth about perennial gardening. The goal is not total control. The goal is partnership. You provide the conditions. Nature handles the rest. And over time, the garden becomes something larger than what you originally planted. That's the real power of perennials. Not just beauty. Not just lower maintenance. Longevity. You plant once, and the garden keeps giving. More flowers, more pollinators, more birds, more texture, more life. Year after year after year, the gardening industry will always try to sell you constant replacement. More annuals, more fertilizer, more products, more maintenance. But the most beautiful gardens in the world often work differently. They mature, they deepen, they become richer with time instead of more exhausting. And that starts with choosing plants built for permanence. So now I want to hear from you. Which one are you planting first? Are you building a sunny pollinator border with coneflower and black-eyed Susan? A shaded woodland retreat with hostas and bleeding hearts? Or are you planting peonies for the next generation? Tell me in the comments. And if this video changed how you think about gardening, hit subscribe. Because every week we bring you practical growing knowledge designed to help you build a garden that becomes more beautiful every single year. See you in the next one.